Hello from Halifax. This is Jo with Jo to the World Creations, and today we're going to be making my heart bookmark crochet pattern. This is a fun, quick and easy crochet bookmark pattern that you can make in less than half an hour. It's a wonderful crochet gift for any book lover in your life. We're going to be getting right to the video tutorial. All the details such as the hook size, the amount of yarn required, the yarn weight, as well as the step-by-step written instructions, they're all available entirely for free on my website, and there's a link to that in the description below this video. We're going to start by making a magic circle. This is how I make a magic circle. I have another video showing how to do this step-by-step slowly that I'll link to in the description below this video. Now we're going to chain one. In this pattern, chains never count as stitches. Next, we're going to be making a number of stitches directly into the magic circle. First, we're going to make a half double crochet stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook into the magic circle, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull that yarn through all 3 loops. Next, we're going to be making 3 triple crochet stitches into the magic circle. I call them triple crochet stitches. Some people call them treble crochet stitches. It's the same stitch. So to make our first triple crochet stitch, we're going to yarn over twice, insert our hook into the magic circle, yarn over and pull up a loop. We have 4 loops on our hook. Yarn over and pull that yarn through the first 2 loops, 3 loops left on our hook, yarn over, pull that yarn through 2 loops, 2 loops left on our hook, yarn over and pull that yarn through those remaining 2 loops. There's our first triple crochet stitch. We're going to make 2 more. There's our second triple crochet stitch. And there's our third. Next, we're going to make a slip stitch. Insert your hook into the circle and pull up a loop. Now pull that loop through the loop that was on your hook. Quick note that when we count our stitches at the end of this round, this slip stitch counts as a stitch. Now we're going to make 3 more triple crochet stitches right into the magic circle. There's 1. There's 2. And there's 3. Now we're going to make 2 half double crochet stitches. There's 1. There's 2. Now we're going to make a triple crochet stitch. And for our last stitch, we're going to make a half double crochet stitch. Let's quickly count our stitches. We should have a total of 12 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is the slip stitch. 9, 10, 11, 12. That chain 1 does not count as a stitch. Now we're going to pull the tail of the magic circle tight to close. We are going to slip stitch into the top of the first half double crochet stitch that we made in the round. So we're not working into the chain one stitch, we're going to work into the top of this half double crochet stitch, and we're going to slip stitch into that stitch to join. So I'm inserting my hook under the top two loops of that first half double crochet stitch, pulling my yarn through and making a slip stitch to join. Now that slip stitch that we just made does not count as a stitch. Just a quick note that it's okay if your work curls during the first couple of rounds. It will lay flat after the final round. To start round 2, we're going to chain 1. We are not going to turn. We're going to be working into the very first stitch. This is the stitch that's attached to that chain 1 we just made. In this first stitch, we're going to make a half double crochet. Next, we're going to work in the very next stitch, and we're going to make 2 half double crochet stitches into that same stitch. There's 1. And there's 2. Next, we're going to work into this next stitch. As you can see, my work's curling a little, so just make sure you're finding the top 2 loops of that next stitch, and into that stitch we're going to make 3 triple crochet stitches. There's my first, working into the same stitch. There's my second. And there's 3 triple crochet stitches all in the same stitch. We're going to be working into the very next stitch, this stitch right here, which is the stitch before the slip stitch. And into this next stitch, we're going to make a double crochet stitch and a single crochet stitch in the same stitch. So for our double crochet stitch, yarn over, insert your hook into that next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, bring that yarn through, 2 loops on your hook, 2 loops left, yarn over and pull the yarn through those 2 loops. Now we're going to make a single crochet stitch into the same stitch. So insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull that yarn through those 2 loops. Next, we're going to be working into the slip stitch right here, and we're going to slip stitch into that slip stitch. This slip stitch here will count as a stitch. It can get kind of tight. Next, we're going to work into the next stitch, and again my work's curling, so just make sure you're finding those top 2 loops, and into this next stitch we're going to make a single crochet stitch and a double crochet stitch into the same stitch. Next, we're working into the very next stitch, and we're going to make 3 triple crochet stitches into that same stitch. There's 1. There's 2. And there's 3. Working into the next stitch, we're going to make 2 half double crochet stitches. There's my first. And there's 2. Working into the next stitch, make 1 half double crochet stitch. Working into the next stitch, make 2 half double crochet stitches. There's 1. And there's 2. Working into the very next stitch, into this stitch, we're going to make 3 stitches, all in the same stitch, starting with a double crochet, then a triple crochet, still in the same stitch, and then another double crochet stitch in the same stitch. Next, we're going to be working into the last stitch. This is the last stitch right here. It can get a little confusing because this next stitch kind of resembles a stitch, but this is actually the slip stitch from the previous round, and we don't work into this stitch here. So this is the last stitch we'll be working into. And into this last stitch, we're going to make 3 half double crochet stitches, all in the same stitch. There's 1, 2, and 3. Let's quickly count our stitches. You should have a total of 25 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That was 20 right here. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Now we're going to slip stitch into the top of this first half double crochet stitch that we made, working under both loops, slip stitch into this stitch right here. And once again, this slip stitch does not count as a stitch. To start round 3, we're going to chain 1. We are not going to turn. We're going to work into the very first stitch. This is the stitch that's attached to that chain 1 we just made. So working into this first stitch, we're going to single crochet. Next, we're going to single crochet in the next 3 stitches. Just make 1 single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. That's 2 and 3. Working into the very next stitch, we're going to make 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch. There's 1 and 2. Working into the next stitch, we're going to make 3 single crochet stitches, all in the same stitch. There's 1, 2, and 3. Working in the next stitch, make 2 single crochet stitches. There's 1 and 2. Working into the next stitch, just make 1 single crochet stitch. Next, we're going to be working into the top of the slip stitch from the previous round. And into this slip stitch, we're going to slip stitch. So working right here, make a slip stitch. This next stitch is a little small, but we're still going to work into it. Into this next stitch here, we're going to make a single crochet stitch. Working in the next stitch, make 2 single crochet stitches. 1 and 2, both in the same stitch. Working in the next stitch, we're going to make 3 single crochet stitches, all in the same stitch. There's 1, 2, and 3. Working in the next stitch, make 2 single crochet stitches. 1, and in the same stitch, another. Now we're going to single crochet in each of the next 8 stitches, just making 1 single crochet in each of the next 8 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. At this point, you should have 4 stitches left in the round. Remember that this slip stitch here doesn't count as a stitch. We're not going to work into that, so count 4 stitches. We're going to work into the very next stitch, and into this next stitch, we're going to make 2 single crochet stitches into the same stitch. Make 1 single crochet stitch and then make another in the same stitch. Next, we're going to be making a number of chains. These chains are going to determine the length of our stem. I'm calling this a stem. I've made 36 chains, and my stem is approximately 7 inches long. Now that's measured after making slip stitches in each chain all the way back up. So make sure to measure after you make slip stitches, not after making your number of chains. But you can easily adjust the size of your stem by making more or less chains, and there's no specific multiple required, so you can make any number of chains. To make my chains, I'm simply just going to chain 36. You go ahead and chain 36 or your desired number and come back to the video. I now have 36 chains now made. We're going to start by working into the second chain from the hook, and I'm going to work into the top loop here. Working in the second chain from the hook, I'm going to slip stitch. Again, inserting my hook under the top loop of that chain, pulling my yarn through and making a slip stitch. And we're going to make a slip stitch in each chain all the way back up to the heart. Just make 1 slip stitch in each chain. You go ahead and make a slip stitch in each chain all the way back up to the heart, and then come back to the video. I'm almost finished making a slip stitch in each chain. I have 1 chain left to work into before I get back to the heart to show you what that looks like. Here's my 1 last chain that I'm going to insert my hook under this top loop here and make my final slip stitch into that last chain. I chained 36, and now I have a total of 35 slip stitches now made. Now we're going to resume working into the heart. The last stitch that we did on the heart, we made 2 single crochet stitches into this stitch right here. We're going to make 1 more single crochet stitch into this stitch. This is the last stitch we worked into. There should already be 2 single crochet stitches into it, and we're going to make 1 more single crochet stitch into the same stitch. So working right into the same stitch, make a single crochet stitch. You should now have 3 stitches left. We're going to make 1 single crochet stitch in each of those stitches. So I'll make 3 single crochet stitches, 1 in each stitch. So there's my 1 single crochet in the 3rd last stitch. In the 2nd last stitch, make 1 single crochet stitch, and in the last stitch, single crochet. Next, we're going to use the invisible joining technique to finish the round. First, let's remove our hook. Next, we're going to cut the yarn from our skein, leaving an approximate 8-inch tail. So simply cut your yarn, leaving an 8-inch tail. Next, we're going to pull the tail through our final stitch. And don't worry, your work won't come undone. Simply pull that tail all the way through the stitch. Now we're going to put our tail in the eye of our yarn needle. With our yarn needle, we are going to be putting our yarn needle from front to back under the top 2 loops of the very first stitch made in the round. So we're going to insert our needle under the top 2 loops and pull our yarn all the way through. And make sure you don't do this too tightly. So I'm pulling it through, starting to connect the last stitch to the first stitch, and I've pulled it through. Next, we're going to be working into the very last stitch that we made in the round. We're going to put our yarn needle through the back loop only of the last stitch. Here's the last stitch. We're going to insert our needle from front to back under this back loop, but we're also going to insert our needle into this loop it's parallel to the back loop. See how it's about half the size of that back loop? So we're going to insert our needle into the back loop and to this loop that's parallel to the back loop. So just here's the front loop. We're not going to insert our hook anywhere around that. Back loop and the loop that's parallel. So I brought my yarn to the front of my work here. I'm going to insert my needle into the back loop and to the loop that's parallel to that back loop and pull my yarn through. Be careful not to pull it too tight. We're just going to fiddle around with it until this invisible join has the same tension and looks just like a stitch. And now look at that. Look at that beautiful invisible join. You can hardly see it. Now what we're going to do is weave this end into the back of our work, but we want to be very careful that we don't pull too tight. So we're going to go through the backs of stitches, and there isn't an exact placement you need to go, but you just want to make sure you don't pull too tight, else that stitch will become too little. And you can play around with it to make sure it looks the same as the other stitches. But just keep checking on it to make sure that tension is okay. So I'm weaving my tail through the backs of stitches, going in opposite directions to make sure that it's nice and secure while also hiding it. And you can do this a few more times, going into the backs of stitches in opposite directions so it's nice and secure, but just keep checking on that invisible join, making sure it's not too tight here. And once you're happy with how it's hidden and how it's secure, what you're going to do is just simply cut the end of it. So it's hidden in the back of your work. And now weave the other end into the back of your work as well. Next, we're going to be making the tassel. To make the tassel, cut 4 strands of yarn that are approximately 8 inches long. We're going to be attaching the tassel to the very first slip stitch that we made when we made the stem. And it's a little tight and there isn't an exact place. We just want to be attaching it right here at the bottom. We're going to insert our hook from the back to the front of the stem, so make sure your stem is nice and straight with the front of it facing you, and insert your hook from back to front in this first stitch or the space around the stitch. So take your hook, insert your hook from back to front through that first stitch or the space around it. Now we're going to take our strands, fold them in half, and put them onto our hook, making sure that the middle of the strands are on your hook and approximate even ends on each side. Now I'm just going to hold them together and we're going to pull them through the stem. And pull them out maybe about 2 inches, but not all the way through. We want them to be a loop there. Now with our fingers, go through the loop, put your fingers into the loop, pick up the ends, and pull them through that loop. And now pull tight to make a knot. And the last step is to trim the ends. I left mine to be about 2 inches from the knot. And if you're making a number of them, it's best to actually measure this so that they're all the same length. But if you're just making one, you can eyeball it. And trim your ends. And now you have a new heart bookmark. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoy making these heart bookmarks. I'd love to see them. I'm here if there's anything I can do to help. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.